Good evening. Oh, let me do that. Good evening. Welcome to the North Augusta City Council study session for Monday, June 24th, 2024. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our city administrator, Mr. Jim Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As per our standard operating procedure, we'll have our agenda review, department details, and then for our focus item tonight, we'll have finances, the focus item, starting with the audit review for the fiscal year ending in December 31st of 2023, and then also an update on the timeline for GovSense. So we'll go through all that tonight, and then I think we've got a fairly manageable agenda, so I'll take you through it. So going right to old business under planning and development, I know there was a fair amount of discussion on this both at the study session and also at the council meeting. This would be the second reading of ordinance number 2024-14 to amend the zoning map of the city of North Augusta by rezoning plus or minus 128.79 acres of land owned by James M. Ford. And so this was a discussion about essentially the project that was going to sit in this upside-down U-shaped property on Oscaga Lake Road. And the crux of the argument is whether or not to rezone part of that from R10 to R7. And what you got from the developer was the by right versus what was there. Understanding that, both those plans had not gone through stormwater or through planning and development or public works. So that's the truth as it is to them on a PowerPoint. But that's not necessarily what the final design would look like until it gets all the way through staffing on both sides of the equation. So I know there was a discussion about the deed restriction covenants. We have not heard anything back from that yet as far as receiving a copy of that deed, and we'll be standing by for that if that happens to come to the department. But I'll pause for any questions, as I know that was the largest debate last week.
So there's nothing really different than what we discussed last week?
No, ma'am. All right, we'll move on to new business. So first will be under public services, resolution number 2024-27, authorizing the city of North Augusta to enter into a contract for the transfer station facility. And so to refresh your memory, we have a $2 million set aside from the Department of Energy settlement money that is dedicated towards the transfer station. We've already spent approximately $200,000 out of that base $2 million for the plans and designs from Davis and Floyd. And they helped us put up together a bid package. That bid is now on the street and closes tomorrow, and that bid opening is 2 o'clock. And so James will have the best data at that point in time. So our intention is to come here to City Council next week with a request for an approval of that contract. Okay. So that you don't have a hard copy of that as of yet, other than just a really short title, but because we don't have the details of the cost or the developer, or correction, the vendor as of yet. The next item we have is under Parks and Recreation, resolution number 2024-28, authorizing the city of North Augusta to enter into a contract with TKE for Riverview Park elevator modernization. And so, part of this is, I know Councilman Carpenter, you've had some dialogue with us about the elevator problems in the activity center, and so we've been able to kind of nurse it along and do some minor repairs to the elevator that's there, but really to get after the root problem, it needs a complete rebuild so that we don't have people stranded in the elevator there, and it's certainly due for it. So I had a discussion with the mayor about kind of our funding strategies, and I wanted to wait until today when the audit was official as far as how much money rolls from the general fund into the capital projects fund. But I feel comfortable after looking at the data that we have the funds available in the capital projects fund without changing any bond ratings or anything along those lines for us to dip into that fund to do the elevator repairs as we need to go forward. And so you'll have a copy of that, or you do have a copy of that in your packets there. And so again, that's for TKE, and that's not to exceed the cost of $170,000. I would also tell you that there was already a line in the capital projects fund at a lower amount that had to do with activity center upgrades. And so my intention is to zero out that line, use all those funds in that capital projects fund line, and then whatever is not covered in that line go into the general, if you will, larger capital projects fund to pull that. It's not detailed. So ultimately, it's still all capital projects fund money. It's just that I'm going to zero out that line if the council approves this action next week. But I'll pause for any questions from you all. We also have two additional items that are not in your packet. I think you've got hard copies there on the dais, and they are not numbered yet. These are still early, but both of these have to do with P&D. So one is to amend the zoning map of North Augusta, South Carolina by rezoning plus or minus 0.25 acres of land owned by Brigham Limited Partnership, Aiken County Tax Parcel Number 007. And you can look, there's a map, and I believe actually Post and Courier has already covered what's coming there based on the feedback from the Planning Commission. But that parcel, in order to be rezoned to general commercial, would allow for a Take 5 oil change establishment there at that location. Did that right, Tommy? All right. Tommy says I'm correct. So if you've got a color copy of that up there, and that would be on Atomic. Subject to any questions, I'll move to the next item, which is ordinance to be numbered, amending Article 5, Use and Use Conditions of the North Augusta Development Code, Chapter 18 of the City of North Augusta, South Carolina. And Tommy can certainly probably explain this better than I can, but ultimately this is for us to amend the code based on the feedback that we had. And Tommy, do you want to take a crack at this one with the council?
Basically, the way the ordinance is written right now, public and nonprofit organizations are prohibited from being in the public use. Only public entities are allowed in there. And talking to Mr. Clifford, there's a lot of public-private partnerships that cities have with nonprofits. And I can think of about a half a dozen, and that would kind of maybe prohibit and limit the city from having those partners and arrangements in those zoning districts. So that is why you have this. It is a proposed to be a special exception. All of these are special exceptions in the development code, and the special exception gives the neighbors notice and the ability to comment and criteria that it has to meet, so it doesn't interfere with the surrounding neighborhoods and the quality of life.
So the most, Mr. Mayor, before you chime in, the most kind of pressing issue that we have about why we want this to go forward is because the best example for us is the Chamber of Commerce operating in the community center, which is Zone P for public. They're a nonprofit organization. In order for us to be compliant with our own codes, we'd like to have that amended so that we can move forward or continue our partnership with the Chamber.
I'm just curious, but the Arts and Heritage Center is a nonprofit that's in the municipal center.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
I have not been running around with eviction.
Let's move forward.
I've been told that I've been heartless, but I have not been running around with eviction notices to any of our nonprofits as of yet. But I just want to make sure that we're in compliance, as far as setting the rules and make sure we're living by our own rules.
Sounds good.
Subject to any questions, I believe that concludes all of the agenda items for next week for our review, and I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to go through department details.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First up for department details is Finance, Linda Williamson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For Finance, our department details are going to be Cycle 1's due date is going to be July 5th. That is the day after July 4th. So if anyone is asking, they need to be reminded that that is our due date. Cycle 2 due date is going to be July 19th. And also during the month of July, we are not going to do disconnects for either cycle due to our software conversion to make sure it's running correctly. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, Public Services, James Sutton.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I want to update you on some activity that's come along with the Environmental Protection Agency related to the lead rule that's coming forth in the fourth quarter of this year. This coming Friday, we will do a mailing to all water customers requesting that they conduct a survey of their service line meaning from the water meter to where it connects to the plumbing, either outside the home or underneath the home, and report that information as required, meet EPA to us, so that we can compile an inventory and submit to EPA in the month of October. And the same, we have to go in and survey our water service lines that run from the main to the meter. And there's one thing I want to highlight. Our water, in order for lead to get in the drinking water, it comes from the service lines, not the water plant or the water mains themselves. Back in 1986 and prior to that, lead was pretty much used in the plumbing system and some of the utility systems as a pipe material. Well, in '86, EPA banned the use of lead in water systems. So basically homes, not all homes from '86 prior, may have lead, whether it be from solder or fixture or some plumbing pipe that's in there. So we encourage them to go in and survey that, provide us that information so that we can meet compliance with EPA. And the same houses constructed after 1987 forward, there's no concern about lead in your drinking water system. You can have no concerns about that. So another highlight, they're going from 15 parts per billion on the test parameters of the water. They're going to drop that down to 10. And our highest level we got in our system is 1.7. So we're extremely low, and we're well below their requirements, and even the ones are changing this year.
So council's reminder, I'd emailed the council about the document. So you have a copy of the documents that the citizens will be receiving as far as the survey, and you've all had a chance to see it, but that's what's going to be going out that James is going to put out to every customer.
Thank you, James.
Hey, Tommy Paradise, Planning and Development.
Good evening, council and mayor. There's no BZA meeting in July. I think we worked them too hard last month. Plans for a Mavis tire and brakes business has been approved for Knox Avenue. Not to confuse you, there is already a Mavis building there, and in talking to the developers, it's my understanding both of them are going to remain open. That's the last that we have heard on that. And the Arts is interviewing consultants for the regional transportation plan tomorrow, and we will be participating in selection of those consultants.
Okay, next department, Public Safety, Chief Johnson.
Good evening. Last week they had the LEN luncheon, the DUI enforcement awards banquet for the state of South Carolina. And North Augusta Public Safety was awarded the Agency of the Year award for agencies between 51 and 99 for the DUI work that had been done for the last year. And also PSO Doug Rubin was recognized throughout the state as the Officer of the Year for the DUI recognition in honor of the work that he had done in the last year serving in the DUI grant role.
Y'all really getting a lot of awards here, aren't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Always be number one, not number two.
Next department, Parks and Rec, Rick Meyer.
That's hard to follow, Junior. Daggone. Congratulations. July will be National Parks and Recreation Month. That's on your agenda. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, the Greenway Tunnel right here under Center Street. The mural has been completed, and we have a ribbon cutting ceremony at 4 o'clock p.m. Also, about the Greenway, if you're familiar with the old split rail fence right up from the activity center, it has been removed and being replaced this week with a new wooden fence. The Riverview Park Activity Center this week is hosting the Antonio Grant Basketball Camp. We also are co-sponsoring at North Augusta High School as they host youth football and cheerleading this week up at the school. We have 18 adult co-ed softball teams in our summer Wood Bat League. They play Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday evenings, and a little bit of sports tourism for you. This past weekend, we had a great event at the Activity Center. Almost every boys' high school basketball team was at the Activity Center. Participating in a live event, which means NCAA coaches were allowed to attend. And if you look below in A, B, and C, we got some local hotel stays, approximately 50 rooms between Crown, True, and Sleep Inn.
That's awesome.
Yep.
50 rooms. Good. Yep. Thanks, Rick.
Next is Tourism Department, Derek Boyd.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So tonight I got Music in the Park is going to have their finale this Thursday. There's actually not going to be at Mod Enfield Park. It's actually going to be inside, and performing will be the Savannah River Brass Works. The Chamber will be wrapping up their Junior Leadership Academy this Thursday as well, with their graduation at 6 p.m. And then in everybody's water bill should have been a QR code and stuff like that for the 803 night that we're going to host with the Augusta Green Jackets. We're going to have a concert at Sharon Jones Amphitheater with Cody Webb. That QR code will give you a discounted ticket to the Green Jackets game that night as well. That's all I have.
As a reminder for the council, we're planning on 803 August 3rd as the ribbon cutting for the amphitheater and the boat dock facility, and that'll flow very nicely into the concert there at the stadium.
That's awesome. Thank you, Derek. Appreciate it.
Okay, next department, Engineering and Public Works, Tom Caesar.
Good evening. Just one item tonight. The Streets and Drains Department is beginning construction of the Front Street parking spaces. Those are the spaces that will support the new kayak launch down at Beck Park. And so there will be 2 ADA compliant parking spaces and 1 regular space that we'll be putting in. Hopefully they should have that work completed within the next 2 weeks, unless it miraculously starts raining again. During that time, there will be intermittent road closures of Front Street between Crystal Lake and Phoenix Street while that work's going on.
Thank you, Tom. It's exciting.
Okay, and last but not least, Human Resources, Kayla Ferguson.
Evening, Mayor and Council. If you look on the back of your department details, you'll see our employment opportunities. It's quite long this week, but we have, I think, 5 new hires coming through our office, so we're getting there. Thank you.
And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Clifford.
I'm going to turn over to Linda. Look at that. That was a good hot potato right there. All right, Grant, over to you.
Well, thank you all for having me here this afternoon or evening to go over the results of the city's audit. Again, my name is Grant Davis. I'm a partner with Malden and Jenkins, and we've ultimately performed the city's 2023 audit. I prepared a PowerPoint. Have no fear, I'm not going to read everything on the slides to you. Some of that is just for your own information, and I'll try to make this brief and ultimately informative. I've got a copy with me, just so you can maybe see me flip my pages. But anyway, we'll go over a few things, which I've noted here, just again, who we are, the results of the audit. I've got some financial trends. I can't help it. I've always got to have a chart or something like that. That's just my personality. A few comments and other matters to talk about, and then certainly to answer any questions you all may have. However, if you notice anything or if you have any comments or questions as I go, I'm happy to try to answer those. As I move through here, again, this is just a little dashboard that talks about our governmental practice. The only thing I'll say here is it's a significant part of what we do as a firm. It represents about 30% of our firm in terms of the hours that we devote to it, and that ultimately translates to serving about 700 governments across the Southeast on an annual basis. So now to the audit. A few things to note here. If you have the document, the annual comprehensive financial report in front of you, one of the first things you get to right after the introductory section is our opinion on the financial statements. This slide just really kind of Cliff Notes version of that opinion. We conducted our audit in accordance with a couple of acronyms there, the GAAP and the GAS, which is the Generally Accepted Auditing Standards and Government Auditing Standards. You'll see that there are several paragraphs in our opinion. I think it goes on for 4 pages. They talk about our responsibilities in the audit, management's responsibilities in the audit, and so forth and so on. The important thing to note, and I guess you can probably tune me out after this, is we've issued an unmodified opinion on the city's financial statements, which is a clean opinion. and you've maybe heard me say this before, but it's really not glamorous language, unmodified, but it's really the only acceptable result for the city in a financial statement audit. So again, a clean opinion. There are ultimately 3 reports in the document with our letterhead on them. The first was what I just mentioned. It's at the front of the document. The second 2 are at the very back of the document. And the second is our report on internal controls over compliance, and those are things with like grant agreements, internal controls, things of that nature. That report is not designed to offer an opinion like the first one was, but to provide what we call negative assurance, which is to say that we planned and performed our audit in accordance with government auditing standards, which indicates that if we notice any instances of internal control deficiencies or instances of noncompliance, that we're required to communicate those to you all. I'm happy to say that we did not note any instances of internal control deficiencies in the form of either material weakness or significant deficiency. And we also did not note any instances of noncompliance. The third and final report that we have issued is what we call our single audit report. So you may be aware, but anytime a government or otherwise receives and ultimately expends over $750,000 in federally sourced money, so that come from a federal program, in a given year, it triggers a compliance audit. The federal government changes annually the compliance requirements that you all have to abide by relative to the spending under the programs that you receive grant monies from. And we conducted a single audit this year. We had what were called 2 major programs that totaled about $2.6 million from the Treasury program that I'm sure you're all familiar with, the mouthful that is the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds under the ARPA legislation. And then one not as quite as common, the Department of Agriculture has an emergency watershed protection program. Both of those together were about $3.8 million that we audited out of a total of about $3.9 million. So we audited the vast majority of the federal spending. And we also have issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the internal controls and compliance with federal statutes relative to the spending under those programs. So again, another positive report. All 3 reports in the document are positive. There are a few things that I'm required to communicate to you all, and we can do that either verbally or in writing. I'll do a little bit of both. So you may have in front of you what we call our auditor's discussion and analysis document. The purpose of that document primarily is to memorialize the required communications that we have to have with you all, and it is there. I'll just mention a few from that, but again, they're all in their full effect in that separate document. I'll mention significant accounting policies. One of the GASB has continued to be active over the last 15 years or so, and they continue to be so for this current year that's just ended. That resulted in the implementation of a new standard, which is called GASB 96. I won't go into that because you probably don't care. But they'll continue to be active for the next few years in new standards. So accounting policies of the city do have to adapt to those new standards, and GASB is the body that sets GAAP for governments. The financial statements include certain elements that are management's judgments and estimates. Estimates are things like the useful life of capital assets or the discount rate to use relative to the city's net pension liability, things like that. You'll see page after page after page of footnote disclosures. Those largely have not changed in terms of their format. Certainly numbers and dates have changed, but I don't think you'll see anything groundbreaking in there if you were to open it up and compare it to a prior year. We received full cooperation from management and didn't ultimately have any disagreements with management in conducting the audit, which is important. There were no past audit adjustments, and what that means is we didn't identify any items that needed to be adjusted and then decide not to do it. So in our opinion, again, the financial statements include all the material transactions of the city. And then we received representations from management about the accuracy of the information that we have been provided and things of that nature. We are independent with respect to the city and all of its related entities, which is essential for us to be able to perform the city's audit. And then after that, I've just got a few financial statement highlights. Again, I've tried to make this brief and informative. This first slide is the city as a whole, so all funds, all functions. again, just big numbers here, $297 million in total assets, $136 million in liabilities. That gives us net position, which is just equity in the government world, of $161 million. You can see that's broken up in different categories there. And then on the income statement side, again, for the city as a whole, all funds, all activities, total revenues, $61 million versus total expenses of $49 million. Gives us a $12 million increase in the equity of the city. So again, this is a big picture focused, all things considered here. And then the same kind of concept for the general fund. General fund ended the year with about $9.2 million in total assets, and of that, almost $8 million is cash. The difference is various receivables and things of that nature, but ultimately a very liquid balance sheet with the vast majority of the general fund's assets being cash versus liabilities of about $3.5 million. That gives us fund balance of $5.7 million. It's broken down in those components and the sub bullets there. I guess probably the most important part of fund balance is the unassigned amount at $3.7 million. So again, a strong number relative to total fund balance. And then what I did, you'll see in parentheses there, 83 days of total fund balance on hand. What I did is I took total fund balance and applied that to the expenditures of the city general fund for 2023. It's basically, if you take the expenditures of the city divided by 12, that gets you a certain amount by month. And you take that as a function of fund balance, and that basically says 83 days of total fund balance on hand as of December 31. And then total revenues of the general fund, $23 million. Same for expenditures, $23 million. That gives us an increase in the general fund's fund balance of about $85 million. Like I said before, I like charts. Some people do, some people don't. This is just a chart of the general fund's revenues by type. You can see the largest slice of the pie is property taxes, which is certainly not atypical for a city government. The subsequent slide is the same concept, expenditures of the general fund, just in pie chart format, public safety being the largest slice of the pie here, which again is not atypical for a city government. After that, I think I've only got two more. I don't want to chart you to death. This is just historically, basically the inflows, so revenues and transfers from other funds are in blue, and then the red are expenditures and transfers out to other funds. So just really kind of a bar chart of the income statement of the general fund for the last 5 years. And then similar concept here. Last chart I have for you is simply just the change in the general fund's fund balance for the last 5 years. So in 19, it decreased by $449,000. In 2023, it increased by $85,000. So just so you can see the flow year over year there. Just after that, just the last couple things to talk about here. Like I said earlier, GASB continues to be active in its pronouncement making. There's a new one that really changes the definition of what accrued leave is. So like sick leave, compensated absences, all that stuff is being redefined and will ultimately change the way that's accounted for. There are some others which I've noted below that they'll continue to look at. I always like to include this. You probably don't want to participate in it, but we offer free quarterly continuing education to our clients. Certainly love to have y'all sit with us through a day of all things governmental accounting if you want to. And if you do, my email address is down here in the communication part. Again, we'd love to have you. They're virtual. So anyway, again, this is it. I think I have here. I don't have any other slides. Very positive from our perspective, the entire audit process, and certainly want to thank Linda and her team for all of the work that they do throughout the year and then after the year to get everything to us in a timely manner and have me be able to be here in June. And also want to give a shout out to Miss McCauley for helping me out in the elevator. I was carrying a big box and I couldn't press the third floor button, so she came to the rescue there.
Right.
Anyway,
I got a couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
I ask you these two every year. I should remember. Restricted cash of $11 million. What's the restriction on that?
I don't have a copy of the.
It's on page 36 under cash or net positions. Cash 47, and then restricted is 11, and I can't ever remember what that is.
Let's see where that shows up here. Most of it appears to be water and sewer related. If you look on page 15, not to divert your attention.
Print it off.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, page 15 of the document shows basically by activity where that cash comes from. Yeah, I mean, water and sewer is restricted basically for debt service is the vast majority of that, so future debt service. Sanitation doesn't have any of the other enterprise funds. And then, let's see, where was it?
That's fine. That's where it is. Let me ask you, how does 83 days compare to other municipalities? Y'all love to do these kind of averages, or I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean,
For
it really,
citizens.
yeah, I mean, I think what I've always tried to communicate is that there are a lot of variables comparing yourself from one city to another, just because, you know, it's easy to say a city is a city, and of course that's really not the case. There are differences in services that are offered. The difference in year end is important. So, you know, for example, City of Aiken's a June year end. You all are a December year end. There, if you think about the majority of the revenues that say your general fund takes in being tax related, those have certain cycles where you're not getting uniform payments all year long. You get a bunch of it all at one time, and then a couple months later, maybe your business licenses are in May or April or May or something like that. So I think seasonality of revenues is important, and then you have the concept of seasonality of the expenditures. Now, some things, you know, your personnel costs largely probably aren't super seasonal, but you may have other things that are going on at various times. So to answer your question, I think in light of your more significant revenue source being property taxes being due basically in January, if you're going to get all that money then, January, February, the vast majority of it, then you're not in a bad spot to be 2.5 months of fund balance. I think if you have received the vast majority of your major revenue source at year end, and you only have 2.5 months to get you all the way back around to that time again, that's not great. So I think it's certainly a good position to be in from what I understand of the way the revenue sort of cycle goes with the city.
Can you educate me on a term?
Sir?
Can you educate me on something?
Sure.
I'm sure council there.
Sure.
So I want to make sure I'm right on this. Deferred outflows and inflows.
Oh man.
So let me tell you what. Tell me if I know this. So deferred would be like when we plan our budget, we don't have that revenue coming in till the next fiscal year. So we report that as a deferred inflow, and then once we start receiving the payments, then it just becomes revenue. Kind of the
right. Yeah, a deferred outflow is the best thing that in short version for the purposes of where we are today. I think the closest thing that I can explain to you for deferred outflow is almost like a prepaid. Okay. So you've paid for it up front. You're going to recognize the expense over time. On the deferred inflow side, it's basically you've got a revenue that's sitting on your books that you're going to recognize in the future. So the deferred inflow is like you've got it in your hand, you're going to collect it, or you're going to recognize it later. Right. An expense or deferred outflow is like we've got an expense, we paid for it now, but we're going to recognize the expense side of it. So those two terms are completely unique to only governments, and there's a discussion in the footnotes about it, but it's a bizarre concept.
We've gotten a number of grants the last year. Sure. So that's considered that'd be a deferred problem.
In certain circumstances, the majority of the balances relate to pensions. On an annual basis, there are changes in actuarial assumptions, and instead of making you recognize the effect of those changes all at one time, they defer it so that you recognize it over. Generally, it's 5 or 6 years, something like that. Now, there are in the fund level statements, like the general fund, for example, could have a deferred inflow for grant monies that have been requested but not yet received, something like that. So it changes. I don't know. I struggle to kind of answer your question because I don't want to get too far down in the weeds. I think the easiest way.
I have the right idea.
I think so. Yeah.
I'm in the ballpark. Okay, that's good. You have any other questions for Grant? Okay. All right. Thank you. I just got a couple comments I want to make. I want to just for the 41st year. We have received the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence. So, Linda, thank you very much, you and your team, for that. That is awesome. Yeah, I tell you, this, I don't know why, just so citizens know, staff directors will be starting budget planning in July as we start moving into it. But one of the things I thought was just very interesting to me is we started, so in the discount in the planning in 2022, the capital projects fund was 1.5 mils, and we realized we need to increase it to like 3.3 and then 3.8. And now COVID happened in 2019, so I know there was a lot going on there. But Jim mentioned the capital project fund. The balance at the end of 2021 is right at $1 million. Okay, there's nothing we buy that's not $10 million. So that's not a lot, right? But because of two things. One, the mill increase has put another probably 1.3 million over the last 3 years. But the more important thing, I think, for our citizens to understand that our administration, led by Jim Clifford, with him and Linda, with our directors, we are putting in from so we have an ordinance where when we have more revenue than expense in our general fund, we have to keep 15%. But everything over that goes in the capital projects fund. And in 2021, because of what happened in COVID, there was $0 transferred. But because of what our directors, their staff has done, being budget conscious, and Jim's leadership with that, I want people, and Linda, I want you to understand, we have gone from $1 million in capital project fund to right at, after the 1.9 that Linda will be transferring from the general fund at the end of this year, we're up to almost $7 million. And that's probably still really peanuts for the size of our city. But to bring that capital projects, so what citizens need to understand is that you have a city government and a council that is trying to be a good fiduciary. And just like individually, you need to have cash in your personal savings for emergencies and issues, just like Jim mentioned with the what we got to do with the river, with Parks and Rec, with the elevator. So I think that is just pretty phenomenal. That tells that the economy's been good. We're in a great community, and we have a staff that I think is very budget conscious. So I just want to commend administration. All you directors are here. I want to thank you on behalf of council for what you're doing, because you're putting money back into capital projects along with the mills. So that's something I think is very positive. So that's all I have, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing else from the staff?
Nope. Oh, we have to do anything else?
I've smelled the barn, but Linda reminded me we have one more topic.
Okay. You're trying to get the dinner, aren't you?
So I was just going to give Council and Mayor a quick update on where we are with the new software. The finance portion and the accounts payable modules, we are set to go live July 1 with those two. What these two will be, the accounting and the reporting software, and then also the obviously the checks made to our vendors. And just so you know, the city's faced a couple challenges this year with paper checks. First, we've struggled with the post office delivering our checks. So we have been reissuing tons of checks this year to our vendors. We've also been the victim of check washing several times this year. Lucky for us, our bank has been strong and has caught all of them before we were responsible for it. With that said, the new software, we will be issuing more ACH payments to our vendors. So number one, they'll get paid faster. And number two, it's a much safer option than paper checks. The MASC has also recommended that cities start using this process. So that will start the week of July 1st. The next rollout for the software, which is what everyone's excited for, the utility billing, the business licenses, and the customer portal is set to go live somewhere between July 8th and July 15th. GovSense has been working hand in hand with Badger, which is our water meter company, and they're getting all the data migrated at this point. It took just a tad longer than they thought, but they are confident that we will be up by the mid-month. With that said, while we do this changeover, we will have to take the online payment system down for about 24 to 48 hours. With that, the finance department will definitely advertise that date and time when we expect it to go down and when we expect it to come back up. And the other thing is we've scheduled this so it will not affect the due dates during that. And also, we're not going to have the disconnects, so we don't have to worry about trying to get all that done while we're trying to get the software up and running. So the customer portal will also come up at the same time that the utility billing comes up. So when we take the online payment system down, the new system that comes up will be the new system.
So for citizens who already are drafting, it automatically converts, they'll have to go in on the customer portal and set it up again.
I believe so, but we will have that information set.
That'll be in the information.
Yeah, we'll have that for them.
Okay.
That information for them as to what exactly is going to go on. We will advertise when the portal is up and running, and that'll be when the customers can start creating their accounts, setting up to receive e-bills, and also figure out if they want to pay monthly. I mean, if they want to go on every month and pay, or if they want to do an auto draft. So they'll be able to do all that online. And we are going to also have staff on hand who help citizens in the building. So if they want to come on site to get help with setting up their accounts, we will be there to help them. Or if they come in, we'll show them to the site as well. The payroll and human resources management side of things is set to go live October 1st. There was a lot of data that had to be migrated, and we had to push back the start date a little bit. And with that pushback of what we needed, they wanted us to go live on a quarter start date. So that's why it's pushed back to October 1st. And with this software, this is going to give employees access to their payroll information and their benefits information. So they will be able to access that from an app. And they will also be able to make changes to any of their tax documents online. They do not have to come see us. They can obviously still come see us, so it'll be their choice. All of their biweekly notifications will be available on the app, and any of their tax data. So they will get their W-2s as soon as they're processed, they're there.
So, Mr. Mayor, and also for the council, Linda brought a recommendation which I thought was a good one, which is to suspend the water cutoff in July, because there is some risk that as we move people from one account section to another, that there are errors that can occur. I don't think there are going to be a large percentage of those, but we also want to give our citizens the benefit of the doubt. And so I think Linda's got a very good plan. And as we've walked kind of through the mechanics of this, having additional staff to be able to do hands-on work with folks that need help, to get onto the website and do the things they need to do. I would imagine we'll have a bit of a spike in July and August with, touch labor with customers. But long term, this is really going to help drive down the number of people that need to physically come into the office to pay and be able to do this, online in a much easier fashion than they're currently doing it. So I think the end result's going to be better than we have today.
How will they know this information? You said will be in the water bill or a separate mailing?
We are going to obviously get it out on all of our social media accounts, and we'll have it posted in the municipal building. And then the others would be part of the map. We'll need y'all's help as well to get that out.
There's not a way to send something out in a water bill or something that says, hey, you need to go to the client portal?
Not currently. We'll have to look in to see if we can maybe do a QR code or something. I'm not sure. Our current water bill is very hard to manipulate. So trying to get that out there to everybody is.
I guess I'm just talking out loud. I'm just trying to figure out, come July the 8th and 14th, how am I going to know? How will I know? I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to know? How are you going to know? Pat? How are your people going to know?
Well, they probably won't. I guess they'll come in and we just tell them then. Yeah, I mean, that's.
Okay.
So we're the process that we have now for our credit card payments, for our online card payments, that's going to come off. And so when somebody gets their utility billing, they're going to go to the North Augusta website because that's where they're directed to pay their online bill. It will automatically direct them to the portal because that's what we're going to be putting up as the new credit card processor for the utility bill.
So the only people that would not know is if you weren't using online billing currently, and then they would find it out later.
Correct, yes.
So
So we'll have it on the new bill when it gets mailed out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm saying,
So-
there's gonna be something on some
So,
building.
yeah, on the new bill, when they generate it, it's going to have all the information. We haven't formed that yet. And so what'll end up happening is that what we're mailing out should get less and less as people sign up for e-billing.
We might need to extend July to August for disconnects.
But they
You're gonna have a lot of
still-
people coming into you, and if they in between the billing, then y'all will tell them, hey, by the way, be aware, you can get a new client portal, here's a QR
Yes.
code or whatever.
So anyone that comes in with it to make a payment via credit card, we're obviously going to say, hey, we got a new portal, and try to get them set up then and there instead of sending them home. Also, we're trying to get QR codes for anybody that's savvy enough to handle it themselves, which I know we have quite a few.
Well, Linda, I know, Jim, you and your staff, y'all have worked so hard on this, and this is going to be huge for us. Be patient, but I just think we're going to expect to get some calls. I'm thinking
Yes.
it's going to be
And another reason we're
complicated.
rolling out step by step is one, to make sure that one module is working and going before we try to do the next one. So that we're focused on fixing the one that's going live at the time, so everything will be smooth.
And maybe just a suggestion, maybe put something up like downstairs in the lobby to where it says, hey, new software.
Yes,
update.
that'll be
Just to
that's
see-
not a problem. So we'll have that up on Facebook,
Tony
and we'll
does
have that up on
every day.
any of the social media sites. We'll have that information up, and I will get our sister sites to help me with that information. And yes, we will definitely have information up in the lobby, and possibly we can post it at different locations in the city as well.
We don't need to have anybody with a sign at the twirl or anything. Don't worry. We have to get to
I
that.
believe that's against city code.
But they can still come in and pay.
Yes.
Sometimes they say that's people's outings.
Yes, absolutely. We are, our office is not closing by any means, so we will still be there. This is just for those that would prefer to do everything online.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Now, Mr. Mayor, that concludes all the items from staff.
You got it. Okay. Go ahead, yeah.
My little tree out on Austin Grable, right before you get to the National Healthcare, and where the above ground pipes, y'all know where that is? All right, right above it has been a limb hanging over Austin Grable. Now another little limb is joined it. So one's here and one's here. And I called Rick a couple of weeks ago. Our little church children were at Creighton Park and a limb fell. Thank goodness no one was hurt. But I still think that limb on Austin needs to be cut. Because if it dropped on a car, it'd be.
Is it hanging over the road?
Yes, hanging over almost the whole road. Go out by there and take your little ride.
Well, I know we had discussed this before, Council, and we actually referred that to SCDOT because that's their work to do,
Count
I
that
believe.
gone then.
But we'll go back and re-engage.
You'll be talking about this for about a year now. Going to SDLT, yeah.
Yesterday when I drove by, it's done had a baby.
Call Bill Hicks. Call Bill.
Do I need to call SCDOT or?
No, ma'am. We'll
I
cover
mean,
that
the
for you.
squeaky wheel gets oil.
We'll go ahead and be squeaky one more time.
Okay, one more time.
You're a good squeaker. You're a good squeaker.
Yeah, good squeaker.
Yeah. Okay, the only thing I've got, just one last push for tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, our first citizen community engagement meeting at the Fellowship Hall at Second Providence at 6 o'clock. We are going to have our city administrator talk a lot of great information that I think citizens are not aware of, some how-tos that'll be helpful just some data I think will be very informative about what our folk teammates are doing. Chief Johnson will be there with the CAT team, get a chance for the community to meet him and the community action team. I think it'll be great. And then we'll also have a question and answer period with me and any council that are there. So it's going to be a good turnout. Hopefully spread the word. This is an opportunity to get citizens to actually hear from us and not social media. So hopefully we'll have people show up. So
That First Providence is what address?
Second Providence is right there at Knox and Old Edgefield.
Okay, I just wanted
It's second. Did I say first? I meant second. It's Second Providence. Second Providence, yeah.
The one on Knox.
Knox and Old Edgefield Road. Yep, on the corner. Yep. Yeah, there. So anything else for good? Y'all got anything? You good? All right, we stand adjourned. Thank y'all.